I'm Alan Friesen. I have here with me my community colleague Mandy. So we want to get together with you. We are coming to you from the ancestral home of the Blackfoot people, the Blackfoot Nation, the resilient Blackfoot people. And my friend Mandy here, she told me just recently about this movie, Kímmapiiyipitssini. It's that's how you pronounce it, I think, close. And you could see the spelling of it on that little banner that's going through. And she was really excited about what difference this might make in our community. Mandy, tell us more.
Well, I have done a lot of work with the Indigenous Recovery Coaching program here in Lethbridge, and I had the opportunity to see about half an hour of this documentary, probably about 6 weeks ago or so, maybe even longer, and I've not stopped thinking about it. And my immediate response after seeing what I saw was, if everybody could see this, it would change their minds about how we treat addiction in our community, how we treat our Indigenous community members, and how we could better be making an impact. And so this really, once we saw that it was being premiered at the Movie Mill, I thought, oh, this is the dream. We can get all of these people, different walks of life, in one room, seeing this and changing minds.
That's excellent. So basically, this Saturday at noon at the Movie Mill, we're going to have an airing of this movie and then a discussion afterwards as well. Is that correct? Or is that what's your plan there, Mandy?
Well, I would like to have a discussion, but I don't know. The Movie Mill's been really great because when they heard that we have such a great response, and we have so far over 100 people have already signed up, they will give us more time. So we have, from what I hear, we have one of the participants who's actually featured in the documentary coming, and he's in recovery, that is willing to speak. We have some of the coaches willing to speak, and really it's an opportunity to ask important questions or make important comments about how this film will make you feel.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, thank you, Mandy, for identifying, a rallying point for us to have a discussion about how we might kind of start a journey, start understanding and being able to contribute to the health and welfare of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Because, I know there's a lot of people that are surprised or don't believe the treatment of Indigenous people in our society, but it was, now that you've done the research, I've done the research, really, really clear that for 6 generations, 7 generations, the government of Canada, the churches, the major church institutions, the RCMP were all very, very much complicit in destroying the Indigenous cultures, in destroying Indigenous people. Right. That's the reality of it. And the fact that our Blackfoot brothers and sisters are here today speak to how resilient they are. Like, I mean, all of that burden, and they're here and they're with us. And I think I speak for you as well. I want to try to find out how to be an ally now. How can I contribute? How can I help? Would you agree, Mandy? Or what do you think that's where we got to get to, right?
I think there's a couple, those are all super valid points. And I think there's a couple of things that we can even break it down like into simplicity, which is by acknowledging that our Indigenous community has not been treated well, is not a reflection of you personally. Right. It's okay to say, I'm sorry for something that you might not have known about or that you didn't understand, and for you not to take that whole burden on yourself. Our job as human beings is to make things better. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to say, well, we're making it better because we made all of these horrible mistakes. Not at all. I grew up in a house where we always had Indigenous culture. My dad, I think, always felt like he was part of the Indigenous community, even though he was, an Italian living in Southern Alberta. So for me, it wasn't until I moved to Lethbridge where I was like, wow, this is totally different. And I can see where people, I can see the sensitivities, and sometimes I don't understand it. I think the other thing is that we don't need to create apples to oranges or compare apples to oranges, which is the other thing that I see a lot of, which is, well, look at our Japanese community, or look at, what's happening in other parts of the world, or look at, what happened in World War II with the Holocaust. Acknowledging what's happened with our Indigenous community does not cancel out what's happened to those other groups. It's just that we're putting attention on what's happened to our Indigenous community. And that's okay. It doesn't, we have enough room to have discussions about all of these things.
You bet. In no way does our acknowledgement or understanding of the treatment of our Indigenous brothers and sisters in any way diminish their experience or the experience of other people throughout the world who have experienced trauma and unfairness and racism and violence, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also think that we can love Canada and still be disappointed with this part of our history. And we can support our troops, and we can support the things that have happened by people that have done good. Well, they were also doing bad because we're learning, and it doesn't need to be that we just then shut down and don't acknowledge any of it because we're scared. And so, that's one thing I think I've really learned through this. I've also learned that minds can change. And I've also learned that it's really dangerous to say that all addiction is a choice.
Oh, for sure. Gabor
trauma-induced addiction is like nothing else.
Yeah. Gabor Maté, of course, which you know him better than I do, I'm sure, but I've studied lots of his stuff. And he says every person with a substance abuse disorder has suffered trauma in their life. Every person, right? It's not, that it's not a choice you make. It's all of that trauma, that toxic trauma, if it's not expressed in some way, somehow, then that's just something to avoid that pain that person's experiencing for a little while with drugs, or on a smaller scale, eating the really salty treat or eating the, right? Like, I mean, that's also an addictive thing to get you away from uncomfortableness with your emotions at that time, right? So,
and it's one of those, by understanding that, or saying that we understand that trauma-induced addiction exists, does not mean that we condone addiction.
No.
Or that we condone, what we see, or that it's like this gateway to then we accept crime or supporting people, or it has nothing to do with that. It's getting down to like the very basics, which is we understand that you're trying to get through something. And that is what the beautiful part of this documentary is, that is what I saw in there. And I'll just, I know everyone's going to see it, but just the one part that really stood out to me, which it still gives me chills and chokes me up, is there is an older gentleman in the hospital on the reserve, and his doctor, who's Dr. Esther Tailfeathers, who's from the reserve, says, "Oh, you've been clean and sober for a couple of days, but have you dealt with your trauma?" And he just breaks down and he said, "I can't, it's too hard." And she said, "But that's why you're going to drink." And he said, "But I just can't, it's too hard." And so to see a man of that age, where, we're also dealing with a demographic that not just culturally, but maybe even that age group and what we knew back then, you weren't allowed to talk about the bad things that happened to you. And when you're not allowed to talk about them, you find other ways to cope.
Yep. Well, not allowed to talk about it. And also, who would you tell?
Yes.
Like, if, you're in a residential school, who are you going to tell? Like, how's that going to make any difference? Right. So, yeah. Anyways, we can still accommodate. This is an airing that's free, nothing you have to pay for. Your admission and snackies will be included.
And I have to say something on that, Alan, and I know that you're trying to brush past it, but when I put this call out to, I consider this like my passion project and the passion project of the coaches at the IRC who want everybody to see this as well. You automatically made it part of your passion project and stepped in and was like, how can I make this better? I'm going to help pay for the concession and the tickets. Let's split this. Let's do this. Let's change minds. And I'm just so thankful for that, Alan, because I appreciate it.
I am honored to contribute. Mandy, you're like a leader in the community. I'll just follow you. Whatever you think is a good idea, I'm in. Mandy, what do you need to make it happen? So, okay.
Oh, that's so nice. So yeah, we still have limited space, only about 30 to 40 tickets left before we have to let the movie mill know what our numbers are.
And for people's comfort level with COVID, how's that going to work?
So they're part of the what is that program called? It's the same as restaurants.
Okay.
So they're part of the vaccination or the vaccine program. So everybody needs to be double vaxxed and show proof of vaccination. It looks like you will be masked until you sit down, and then once you're sitting, you'll be able to take off your mask to eat your concession snacks. And they are willing to allow people to come as long as they have that proof of vaccination. So you do need to have the barcode.
The barcode. So on your phone, or I guess you can actually bring the document, but on your phone, most people are going to do it. So double vax, wear a mask. Once you're seated, you'll be able to take the mask off. And then we have 30 tickets available yet. You can see the email address. Is it on there? Maybe it's not on there. How do where they send an email to info@Collaborative Strategies? Is that correct?
Yes, info@collaborativestrategies.ca.
There you go. info@collaborativestrategies.ca. And then we, as many tickets as we have, we want to have the place full. We want to have a very meaningful and life affirming discussion about how we move forward. How do we and our Indigenous brothers and sisters get together and go from surviving to thriving, right? I mean, that's, that's
and
where
and at the very least, maybe it will change your own perception or your own bias and open up your mind. And I think any opportunity we have as we, go through life to have our minds changed is pretty powerful.
Definitely. At the best possible thing that you could talk about our past is that it was very un-Canadian. Let's move forward in a very more Canadian, caring, inclusive, compassionate way. No matter what happened before, let's move forward in that manner.
Yes.
Okay. If you can come and you're interested, send Mandy, her team, their email that you would like to attend. And then we will see you on Saturday at noon at the Movie Mill. And it will be a lovely event. And thank you so much for getting us going on this, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate it.
Okay. See you Saturday, my friend.
Okay. See you.